Once upon a time, in a land full of wonders, there lived a kind little fox named Finley. One day, while wandering through the sparkling forest, Finley discovered a hidden door beneath a glowing tree. With a heart full of curiosity, Finley opened the door and stepped into a world of flying butterflies, singing flowers, and stars that twinkled like diamonds. But something was missing: the magical golden acorn that kept the forest alive. Finley knew that only the purest of hearts could find it, and so the adventure began. What would Finley discover next? My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. with a message from my dad. "Don't trust Mom." 9 minutes later, my sister and I were moving through the darkness, and the situation was already worsening. The bright phone screen stung my eyes in the dark. The message contained 3 short lines that felt confusing at first, then suddenly clear. My father had been on a 5-day business trip to Seattle, something he did monthly for his consulting work. He was always precise and consistent. He never texted after 10 p.m., never sounded alarmist, and never sent messages without reason. This message contradicted everything I knew about his careful, controlled nature, which suggested that something was seriously wrong. I was 18 and mature enough to tell the difference between exaggeration and real fear. This text carried genuine urgency, compressed into 14 words. I threw off my blanket and grabbed clothes from the floor, pulling on pants and a sweater while trying to understand what "don't trust your." Carol was downstairs in the living room, where I had left her an hour earlier, watching a crime documentary and drinking wine, as she often did at night. It was standard suburban behavior. Nothing about the message itself seemed threatening, but Brian would not send it without purpose, and the instruction to take my sister and leave suggested immediate danger, not confusion or paranoia. I slid my feet into shoes and grabbed my backpack, emptying out textbooks and replacing them with my laptop, charger, and the emergency cash I kept hidden in my desk drawer without ever fully explaining why. At that moment, the $350 I had saved felt like the most valuable thing I owned. My 14-year-old sister, Emma, was still asleep, undisturbed by my hurried movements in the next room. I moved quietly down the hallway and eased open her door, wincing as the hinges creaked. She lay buried under the blankets, only her dark hair visible, breathing evenly in deep sleep. Waking her quietly would be D, and Brian's message made it clear he did not trust her. I knelt beside Emma's bed, placed my hand gently over her mouth, and shook her shoulder. Her eyes opened wide in shock, and she tried to cry out against my hand. I pressed a finger to my lips and whispered into her ear, barely audible. "Dad sent an emergency message. We have to leave right now without Carol knowing. I'll explain later, but you need to trust me and stay completely quiet." Emma looked frightened and confused, but she nodded. I removed my hand, and she sat up, reaching for her glasses on the nightstand. I had already pulled clothes from her closet, pants and a hoodie, and handed them to her, motioning urgently for her to change. She slipped them on over her pajamas, her hands shaking, and I pushed her feet into the nearest shoes without bothering to tie them properly. Emma's window faced the backyard, and I had taken the screen off many times before to sneak out. I removed it quickly and looked down at the 10-foot drop into the garden. It wasn't ideal, but the flower bed below would soften the landing. I tossed both backpacks out first, listening as they landed in the mulch, then helped Emma climb through the window. She hesitated at the edge, staring down with visible fear. I grabbed her wrists and lowered her as far as I could before letting go. She dropped the last few feet with a dull thud that sounded far too loud in the quiet night. I followed immediately, landing and rolling to absorb the impact. My ankle twisted slightly, but it supported me when I stood. Emma looked at me with questions I couldn't answer yet, so I took her hand and led her toward the back fence. We had only minutes before Carol noticed something or came upstairs. The fence was 7 feet high, but I climbed it by stepping on the crossbeam, pulling myself over, and dropping into the neighbor's yard. Emma struggled more, but I helped her over and caught her when we crossed 3 backyards before reaching a street about 3 blocks from our house. We were both out of breath. Only then did I take out my phone and reread Brian's message, searching for anything I might have missed. The timestamp showed it had been sent at 3:05 a.m., 9 minutes earlier. There were no follow-up messages or missed calls, just those 3 lines, suspended on the screen like a warning. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. His calm, professional outgoing message felt completely at odds with the urgency of his text. Emma tugged at my sleeve, asking questions I couldn't answer, her voice rising with panic. I showed her the message, and I watched her face drain of color under the streetlights. What does he mean? Why can't we trust Carol? What's happening? I told her I didn't know yet, but Dad wouldn't say this unless it mattered. We needed to find somewhere safe and figure things out. I tried to sound confident, even though I had no plan beyond. We were standing on a quiet street at 3 in the morning with nowhere to go and no way to reach the parent who had warned us. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Carol. "Where are you, girls? I heard noises upstairs." Her casual tone felt out of place, as if nothing unusual was happening. Maybe, from her perspective, nothing was wrong. Maybe Brian's message was an error, and Carol was genuinely confused about where we were. But I couldn't ignore the precision of those 14 words or the fact that Brian's phone was unreachable. Another message came in before I could respond. "This isn't funny. Come downstairs right now or I'll call the cops." The threat didn't make sense. What would she tell them? That her teenage daughters left the house at night? We weren't missing or taken. We had left on our own, following our father's warning, unless she had a reason to involve the police or wanted to force us back through official pressure. Emma started crying quietly, the kind of tears that come from being 14 and having everything fall apart in the middle of the night. I put my arm around her shoulders and kept walking toward the 24-hour convenience store, a few blocks ahead. At least it would be lit, with people nearby, offering some sense of safety while I tried to decide what to do next. Carol's messages kept coming, shifting from confused to angry to threatening. When we reached the store, it was nearly empty, with only a bored cashier behind bulletproof glass scrolling on his phone. Emma and I stood together in the back corner of the store, near the refrigerated drinks, trying to look relaxed even though we were 2 teenage girls, alone at 3 in the morning. I called Brian again and got the same result as before: voicemail. His phone was clearly turned off. I tried texting instead, asking for more details and letting him know we had left the house, but needed to understand what was happening. My phone rang, and Carol's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering and put it on speaker so Emma could hear. Carol's voice sounded tight and carefully controlled. "Where are you? What's going on? I wake up and both my daughters are gone. The windows are open. You're not answering my messages. You're frightening me." She sounded genuinely upset and confused. There was nothing in her tone that suggested aggression or threat. Still, Brian's warning, echoed in my head, the urgency and clarity that had pushed us to leave. "Brian texted us," I said carefully, watching Emma's face. "He told us to leave the house and not trust you. We need to know why he said that." There was a long silence on the line, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Carol laughed. The sound was sharp and unnatural. "Your father texted you at 3 in the morning telling you to run away from me? That's ridiculous. He's in Seattle at a conference, probably drunk at a hotel bar. He has no idea what he's saying." That explanation didn't align with what I knew. I had never seen Brian drunk, and the message hadn't sounded confused. It had sounded afraid. "Why would he tell us not to trust you?" I asked. "What does he think you're going to do?" Carol's breathing grew faster. When she spoke again, her tone had hardened. "Listen carefully. Your father is having some kind of mental episode. He's been paranoid for weeks, saying strange things and accusing me of things that aren't true. I didn't want to worry you, ... but he's been seeing a therapist for delusional thinking. Whatever he told you is part of that. You need to come home right now so we can deal with this together." The explanation sounded reasonable on the surface, but the timing didn't fit. If Brian had been unstable for weeks, why send an emergency message now? Why turn off his phone afterward? And why did Carol sound as if she were performing concern instead of actually feeling it? Emma's expression reflected my doubts. "I want to talk to Brian first," I said. "I want to hear him say he's okay and that this was a mistake. Then we'll come home." Carol made a sharp sound of frustration. I heard movement, footsteps, and the clink of car keys. "Fine, stay where you are. I'll come get you. We'll call Brian together and clear this up. Where are you?" Every instinct told me not to answer. "We're at a friend's place," I said. "We'll come back once we've spoken to Brian." I ended the call before she could respond and turned off my phone, suddenly concerned about tracking. Emma did the same without prompting. We were thinking the same way. The clerk behind the counter had started watching us closely, likely wondering whether to call the police about 2 teens behaving oddly at that hour. I picked up 2 bottles of water and paid in cash, moving calmly. We needed to leave, but I had no idea where to go. Brian's message told us to run, not where to run to. There was no follow-up plan, no safe contact. As we stepped outside, Emma grabbed my arm and pointed down the street. A car was moving slowly, with its headlights off. Even from several blocks away, I recognized Carol's silver SUV, the one she used for work and practices. She was searching for us and either guessed or tracked where we might be. We hid behind a parked car as the SUV passed. I could see Carol's profile through the driver's window, her face lit by her phone. The expression I saw wasn't fear. It was focused and deliberate. She turned the corner, and we went the opposite direction, staying low until we reached a larger intersection. We ducked into a bus shelter and tried to think clearly. Brian was unreachable. Carol was actively looking for us. Our only options were acquaintances whose parents would immediately call her. We needed an adult who would listen fully before reacting. Someone with authority, but no loyalty to Carol. I turned my phone back on. It immediately started vibrating with messages. Most were from Carol, increasingly angry. One was from an unknown number. "This is Special Agent Megan Johnson with the FBI. Your father asked me to contact you if anything happened to him. Call this number immediately from a secure line. Do not go home. Do not trust local police. I read it 3 times before it registered." The involvement of the FBI suggested something far beyond family conflict. It meant Brian's warning wasn't about stress or mental health. Emma read the message and went pale. Why would Dad be working with the FBI? What did Mom do? I dialed the number using the store's payphone. worried about monitoring. A woman answered quickly, her voice calm and professional. "Agent Johnson, this is Sarah Brennan," I said. "You contacted me about my father. He told us to leave and not trust our mother. We need to understand what's happening." She paused, typing in the background. "Your father has been assisting a federal investigation into financial crimes for 4 months. He uncovered evidence that your mother is involved in a complex fraud operation using her real estate business. We've been building a case, but tonight we lost contact with your father. His last action was sending you that message before his phone went offline." The information hit hard. Carol wasn't just acting strangely. She was under federal investigation. Brian had been secretly cooperating with authorities, and something had gone wrong. "Where is he?" I asked. "Is he safe?" Agent Johnson hesitated. "We don't know. He missed a scheduled check-in from his Seattle hotel. His phone last registered there, then shut down. Agents are en route now. Given the message he sent you, we believe he thought he was in immediate danger." Emma clutched my sleeve as I listened. As questions raced through my mind, past details suddenly felt different. Carol's unexplained absences, things I had ignored before, now taking on a more serious meaning. Her guarded reaction when Brian asked about her business finances made more sense in hindsight. She had started password protecting everything on her phone and computer without explanation. Agent Johnson explained that the people your mother was involved with were not the kind who left witnesses if they believed their operation was at risk. If they discovered that your father was cooperating with a federal investigation, he would become a liability to remove. And if they had already reached him, you and your sister would be potential witnesses, people who knew his routines and could identify others involved. That was why his message told you to leave. The full weight of the danger settled on me then. I finally understood why Brian's message had been so direct and urgent, sent in the middle of the night. We were not escaping ordinary family conflict. We were running from people capable of killing witnesses to protect financial crimes. I asked the obvious questions. What do we do? Where do we go? Agent Johnson gave me the address of an FBI field office about 50 miles north. She told us to get there as quickly as possible, without using credit cards or phones, except for emergencies. If we saw our mother or anyone suspicious, we were to call 911 immediately. She said agents had been sent to reach us, but they would need about 50 minutes. Until then, we had to stay hidden and keep moving. I ended the call and told Emma everything. I watched her expression move from disbelief to fear and then to a quiet, serious understanding. At 14, she was taking in that our mother was a criminal, our father was missing and possibly dead, and we were being hunted by people who had killed witnesses before. It was overwhelming, especially for someone who had gone to sleep worried about school and friends. Across the street, a taxi company operated out of a small strip mall. We moved quickly, watching for Carol's silver SUV. The dispatcher sounded half asleep, but agreed to send a car when I gave a destination. I provided an address 3 blocks from the FBI field office. Even giving a cab company a specific location made me uneasy. The taxi arrived 20 minutes later, an old car driven by a man who clearly didn't want a late-night trip. Emma and I got into the back seat, and I paid him in cash, asking him to drive carefully and avoid main roads. He looked at me strangely, but accepted the money and drove off. After about 4 miles, we noticed headlights closing in fast behind us. The driver glanced in the mirror, cursed, and sped up slightly. He said it was probably drunk drivers messing around. I turned to look and immediately recognized Carol's SUV. It was close enough for me to see her face, fixed and focused. I told the driver it was our mother and that she was dangerous. He looked at me like I was irrational, until her SUV slammed into the back of the cab, throwing Emma and me forward. The driver swore again and pressed the accelerator, but the cab responded slowly. We were on a semi-rural road with almost no traffic, the worst possible place for a chase. Carol pulled alongside us, and I could see her clearly now. Her expression was tight and aggressive. She was trying to force us off the road. Her SUV was heavier and more powerful, and she hit the passenger side repeatedly. The driver panicked, swerving hard to keep control. Emma was screaming. I was on the phone with 911, shouting our location and situation while the dispatcher kept telling me to slow down and repeat myself. Carol hit us again, harder this time, and the cab spun out, turning twice before sliding into a shallow ditch. Even with seatbelts on, we were thrown around inside. My head struck the windshield hard enough to blur my vision. Carol's SUV stopped nearby. I saw her get out and move toward the cab with clear intent. The driver was slumped over the wheel, stunned or unconscious. Emma was crying beside me. I grabbed her hand, kicked open the far door, and pulled her out into the drainage ditch next to the road. We ran into the brush and darkness as Carol shouted after us. She yelled that she was trying to protect us, that the FBI and our father were lying, and that she just wanted to talk. Her words did not match her actions. Nothing about what she was doing suggested protection. The ditch led to a culvert under the road, and we crawled through it, coming out on the other side covered in mud and scratches. Behind us, sirens began to sound. The 911 call had finally brought help. Carol must have heard them too, because her shouting stopped. I heard her SUV start, tires screeching as she fled. We came out of the culvert with our hands raised, shouting that we had called 911 and that we were the victims. One officer approached carefully, with his hand near his weapon, while another checked on the cab driver, who was beginning to regain consciousness. I explained everything as quickly as I could, while Emma cried into my shoulder. The officer remained cautious until I mentioned FBI Special Agent Megan Johnson and showed him Brian's text message. His attitude changed immediately. He radioed a coded message to dispatch and told us to wait inside his patrol car while he verified the information. About 25 minutes later, several black SUVs arrived. Federal agents stepped out, showed their credentials, and formally took custody of us from local police. Agent Johnson was a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a calm expression that suggested little surprised her anymore. She wrapped emergency blankets around both of us and guided us into one of the vehicles. "Your father is alive," she said right away, and the tight feeling in my chest finally eased. She explained that he had been attacked in his hotel room, but managed to fight back and escape. He was now in protective custody and actively asking about us. His attackers had failed, so they shifted their focus to Emma and me, likely hoping to use us to pressure him into staying silent. Emma cried harder at that point, a mix of relief, shock, and exhaustion. I asked where Carol was and whether she had been arrested. Agent Johnson answered bluntly that Carol had left the scene before police could stop her. Warrants had been issued for attempted murder, assault, fraud, and numerous related charges. Every law enforcement agency in the state was looking for her, but she was skilled at disappearing when necessary. The drive to the FBI field office passed in a haze of fatigue and disbelief. We were taken through security and interviewed separately, giving full statements about the night and Carol's actions. Someone brought us food, coffee, and blankets, treating us carefully, as if we might break under too much pressure. Brian arrived later that morning, looking worse than I had ever seen him. His face was bruised, one arm in a sling, and his movements were stiff with pain. When he saw us, he broke down, pulling us into a tight embrace as Emma cried against his chest. He kept apologizing, saying he believed he could manage the situation quietly and protect us. Over the next several hours, we learned the full story. For 6 years, Carol had been running a real estate fraud operation using her professional license to help launder money for a criminal network. Brian discovered evidence of it by chance and uncovered messages showing she was not just involved, but central to the scheme. Instead of confronting her, he went to the FBI. For 4 months, he gathered evidence in secret while pretending everything at home was normal. That night, a breach in the investigation alerted her associates, who sent people to his hotel to eliminate him as a witness. Brian had prepared for that possibility, installed extra locks, and managed to fight his attackers off. Before escaping, he sent us the warning text, knowing we would be targeted next. He told us Carol never planned to hurt us directly. Her intention was to take us before federal agents could use us as leverage to secure his testimony. But when we ran and didn't return home, she panicked. The person who chased us that night was not a mother trying to protect her children. She was someone protecting her criminal operation at any cost. The trial took place 9 months later. Carol was arrested near the Canadian border while attempting to flee with forged documents and a large amount of cash. Brian and the FBI presented extensive evidence showing years of fraud and money laundering, totaling millions. Carol received a 30-year sentence for fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and numerous additional charges that took the prosecution 12 minutes to list. She never looked at us in court, never expressed remorse, and never offered an explanation. The woman sitting at the defense table looked like my mother, but she felt like a stranger. It was the moment I understood that we had lived alongside a criminal for years without knowing it. Brian testified for 2 days, speaking steadily despite clear emotional strain. He described falling in love with someone who had never truly existed and realizing too late that she had been playing a role all along. Emma and I now live with him in a different state, under partial witness protection. It isn't a full relocation with new identities, but it's enough security to let us sleep without fear. We are both in therapy, working through the betrayal and rebuilding trust. With our sense of family safety shattered, Brian is rebuilding his consulting business and learning to forgive himself for missing warning signs he never imagined would put us in danger.